Hi, Lisa K. Donner here for Liberty Nation. With me today is Graham J. Noble, our chief political correspondent. Hi, Graham.
Hi, Lisa. How you doing?
Well, you wrote an interesting piece today, and I really thought it would be a great piece of video. It was called We the People. Could America reach the point of no return? First of all, what did you mean by that title?
Well, I guess what I meant, Lisa, is, it's easy for us to always say every election cycle, we seem to find ourselves saying that this is the most important election in American history. But I think most people will agree that this one in particular is because the nature, the political landscape has changed, even actually, I would say, since 2020. The political landscape has continued to evolve. And it's basically, it's a seismic shift. We've got these two sides who are moving further apart to the point where can we even imagine reconciling our differences? And I think particularly with the nature of this election, the way it turned out in terms of the apparent enormous scale of fraud, or certainly of human error, even if I was going to be really nice about it and not accuse anyone of anything. But whichever way you look at it, the votes are not adding up. I mean, there's something wrong here. And I don't know if 50% of the population is ever going to get past that, no matter what happens. If the president prevails and manages to secure a second term, half of the country is going to be incensed at that. On the other hand, if the election as it stands, sustains and Mr. Biden becomes president, the other half of the country is going to be incensed. And so I think we're reaching, I hate to use this term because everyone uses it, but I think we're reaching an inflection point.
Well, you write, and let me just quote you here: suspend the Constitution, impose martial law, hold a new election. It all seems quite fantastical, and it probably is. Then again, this is 2020, so absolutely anything could happen at this point. If extraterrestrials landed a spacecraft on the south lawn of the White House tomorrow, it would hardly come as a surprise. When you say suspend the Constitution, impose martial law, hold a new election, I mean, it does seem like there is an uprising going on here, and it's not. It is a political uprising, but there's also a liberty uprising going on with all the COVID restrictions. A couple of years ago, when we decided to do a podcast on Liberty Nation, I really wanted to name it The Uprising because I felt that there was an uprising about to begin, an uprising happening. And now I think we're beginning to see it. What do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And just going back to that part of my article that you quoted, I mean, I guess I should add a caveat there that basically when I wrote, suspend the Constitution, impose martial law, and essentially rehold the election, hold a new election. This actually came from, I wasn't necessarily directly advocating those steps. This came from an organization called the We the People Convention, which is an organization out of Ohio. And they actually recently put out, I guess what they described as an ad, but essentially it was a lengthy statement. And in a way, it almost echoed to me the Declaration of Independence, because basically what they said in this statement was, we are facing such a dire situation in this country now that we perhaps need to take extreme measures. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I personally agree that all of those particular steps should be taken. I'm not too keen at all about the idea of martial law being imposed. The libertarian in me recoils in horror at that idea. But at the same time, I think this organization brought up the point that, we've gone so far down the wrong road here that, unfortunately, it might take some drastic measures to right the ship without descending into complete, violence and chaos, because the last thing any of us surely want is to be shooting at each other in the streets. So hopefully we never get to that point.
Right.
But they were suggesting other drastic measures to basically turn around what has happened since November 3rd.
Right. So let's take a moment now and look at the declaration. And I think specifically the portion they're talking about and you're talking about, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. Okay, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So I know that sounds eye-popping and everything, but I think people are getting to the point of, I don't know, Joe Schaefer had an idea, kind of let Rhode Island make its own rules for Rhode Islanders. And of course we do that now, but we're talking to a larger extent.
Well, yeah, and I tend to agree. And you know, the thing about the Declaration of Independence there is it begins talking about why they need to, the colonists essentially needed to sever the ties with the British Empire. And then it goes on in the second paragraph of the Declaration, it goes on to talk about, you know, the inalienable rights that we have, that we are endowed with by our Creator, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And at that point, it says that, you know, when it gets to the point where the government is depriving the people of those rights, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, the government, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So, I mean, it's literally saying that, you know,
you could have written that in 2020, you know,
really could have. And that's why when I read the thing from the We the People convention, and again, I hasten to add, I'm not trying to advocate for what they're saying.
No, certainly not.
But I do understand why they're saying it.
Right. So, and it's almost as if like the Democrats could have said that 2 years ago, and now the Republicans are saying it, you know, so it's not like we're advocating, you know, for a certain policy or something, but it's amazing how our founding documents seem to apply today, don't they?
They do. They're basically eternal. They really are. And you know, of course, the flip side of doing something so drastic as to actually suspend the Constitution and impose martial law, and of course, it would not be the first time in American history that a president has imposed martial law. But the other side of that coin is that if you go down that road, then what happens the next time we have a contested election and the incumbent president decides that he or she does not like the result? Do they do the same thing again? Do they suspend the Constitution, impose martial law? You know, how many times are we going to have to go through that cycle? So that's always the, you know, there's definitely a word of caution attached to the idea of taking drastic action to reverse what many Americans see as a completely fraudulent election.
All right, we're going to end this discussion. Thank you for joining us here on Liberty Nation TV, Graham. But we are going to continue a special segment for our MemberZone subscribers. So we're really talking about the Declaration of Independence and this article that you wrote today. And you wrote, rational people would probably agree the last thing anyone wants is violence or martial law or suspension of the Constitution. That's for sure. But, you know, are we looking at such drastic things right now, or are we looking at civil, you know, such civil unrest? Let's face it, if Trump prevails, the left is going to go nuts. If Biden prevails, the rights, you know, the right has a right to dispute.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I really think I would like to be more optimistic, but I really think there is enormous likelihood that 2021, whoever is still in the White House after January 20th, that it is going to be a bad year, and that's got nothing to do with this virus. I think there could be an awful lot of unrest and an awful lot of upheaval. And I even see possibly certain states, depending on who is in the White House, I can see certain states, be they either red or blue states, taking measures to actually distance themselves from the federal government, even more so than they are now. I think that's a real possibility.
Aren't we now actually seeing an uprising? I mean, you look at the police are running down a restaurant and bar owner in Staten Island. We've got Kelly Ballard wrote a very interesting article today. What's going on over on the West Coast? We've got people tired of all this, and now we have Joe Biden saying, were he to become the president, it would be a great time for 100-day mask mandate.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think a lot of these, it's kind of funny that history always works in cycles. Things come back around, and there are certain points in history when the population of various countries, and sometimes the population of many countries simultaneously, have gotten restless with the status quo, and they've started to, there's been like almost a grassroots movement to sometimes violently affect change, or certainly affect change by kind of a sheer weight of numbers. I mean, 1848 was a year of revolution. 1789. There are certain, and despite the fact that a lot of these protests are about bar owners being arrested because they've defied the restrictions, or people protesting against the lockdowns, or even people protesting about police shootings, I think there's a deeper thing behind all of it, and I think it's just a general restlessness, and I think it's possibly been boiling to the surface for at least a few years. I don't think Trump was at all the cause of it, although he may have been one of the symptoms of it. And I think it's we're slowly grinding our way towards some kind of social and or political upheaval.
Well, I'm always blown away by the brilliance and the prescience of our founders. And I always like to quote James Adams, who said, "Liberty once lost is lost forever." Thank you very much for joining us, Graham.
Thank you, Lisa.
And thanks for a wonderful article today on Liberty Nation. Hop on over to Liberty Nation, and don't forget to watch Rumble, YouTube, Vimeo, and every other TV platform. Liberty Nation is on them all. I'm Lisa K. Donner, Editor-in-Chief. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks for subscribing to the Members Zone.